Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Michael. Today I want to do a cost breakdown of the Camino de Santiago. I did this back in October. I did the Camino Frances from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port all the way down through Santiago over to the coast of Spain, or Fisterra. Now, this took me about 40 days, but I'm going to count it as 41 days because I am counting that initial day in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port before I had actually started walking, because I arrived there and I spent money, so I'm going to count that. Now, I will say this, I was living in Spain at the time, and my girlfriend was up in France, so I was already in the area, so I'm not counting any of the costs to actually get to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, not counting the trains, the planes, the automobiles, none of that. This is specifically what it's going to cost you to do the walking, the food, the accommodation, everything else. Okay, so obviously because we were in mostly Spain, a little bit of France, it's all in euros, but I have converted all of this currency into the US dollar because I believe most people who are going to watch my video are probably going to want it in US dollars. But if you prefer it in euros, or if you want it in Canadian, as I'm Canadian, I would prefer it in Canadian. I'll put that down in the bio below, so you can have all of the currencies below. All right, and now I also just want to preface this. I know I'm doing a lot of rambling right off the beginning, but I want to preface this because I see in all budget videos, somebody's always in the comments like, "This is ridiculous. I could have done it for a quarter of the price." Yeah, you probably could have. You could also do it for 4 times the price. This is what I paid. This is what I believe to be a reasonable amount to do 41 days on the Camino de Santiago. You can do it cheaper, you can do it more expensive. This is simply what I spent. So if you have the inclination to leave one of those comments, you don't need to. It's okay. You don't have to. You can keep it right up here. That's all right. All right, so let's get into it. I broke it down into 3 categories. I tried to make this as basic as possible. I did food, accommodation, and then extras. So your food is groceries, dinners, coffees, snacks, all of it. I just lumped it all into one, and it ended up being my most expensive category. That ended up being $1,304.43, or per day, $31.82. Now, if you're looking to save money, I believe this is the biggest category that you can save money on. I initially was buying groceries, making some packed lunches, things like that, but it got to the point where it became more of a hassle, and because I was tired from walking and everything, I just didn't want to do it. Plain and simple, I found it just far more easy to go to a diner or go to a restaurant when I arrived in a town, or to get breakfast before walking. So that's where the vast majority of my expenses were. It's actually twice as much as my accommodation. So this is easily the most expensive category for my Camino, what I spent on the Camino. And it's also very common while you're walking to stop at the first cafe, second cafe with all the other pilgrims. You sit down, you have a little chat, get to know each other, and it's just really nice to break up your walks, to have a coffee, little snack. So I spent a decent amount of money doing that, and it's one of the best decisions on the Camino, in my opinion. That's where I got to know the most people, and it's just nice to take a break and have a coffee. I love a coffee. Okay, second category was accommodation. I spent pretty much the entire time in albergues and hostels, so dorm beds. I only stayed in a private room once, I guess, in Santiago when I finally arrived. Otherwise, I was in dorms. I was sharing rooms with anywhere from 6 people to, 20, 30 people, depending on which albergues you're staying at. And this ended up being $610.29 for the 41 days, or $14.89 per day. I believe this is a pretty reasonable amount. If you want to do private rooms the entire time, you are going to be spending far, far more, probably 3-4 times as much money. So it's up to you. If you want to splurge for the private rooms, you can. If you're a couple, it makes sense for you guys to get a private room and split it. It might not be that much more expensive, and you'll get far more privacy. Another thing is I ended up getting bed bugs. So there was a big issue with bed bugs while I was on the Camino. So I ended up, by the end, I would say the last 10 to 14 days, week and a half to 2 weeks, I was paying a little bit more to get into nicer albergues because I was so sick of dealing with the bed bugs. And now I hope that's something that you don't have to deal with, but it is a possibility. They're just really bad in Europe, or they have been while I was there. I got them in France and Barcelona about 3 times within a year. I had bed bugs, mostly from the buses and then from these hostels and albergues. So just something to keep an eye on. And the third and final category is extras. So this is everything that you could imagine that you didn't plan for, but you may have to pay. So you break something goes wrong, you have to replace it. This is an extras. Donations, this is an extras. Souvenirs, this is an extras. So it's just things that you can't really plan for, but you're most likely going to have to spend money on. Now mine is more expensive because, as I just said, I had bed bugs and I ended up ruining my rain jacket, my backpack got ruined, my sleeping bag, all trying to get rid of these little buggers. And I had to replace a lot of stuff. So that jacked up my price for the extras, so you can probably save a little bit there. But mine was $381.70 for the 41 days, or $9.31 per day. Like I said, this is also including entrance fees into the cathedrals and things like that. So this is just literally everything else. But your 2 biggest ones are obviously going to be food and accommodation. Because you're not spending money while you're walking, obviously. So the biggest ones are food and accommodation. Then you have your extras. I felt like this was the easiest way to break it down. It's the way that I like to look at it, so hopefully that works for you guys as well. So that brings the total for everything to $2,296.41, or a daily amount of $56.01. I believe this is, for the amount that I got out of this experience, I believe this is 100% worth it. This is probably the most, I won't say the most, but it's one of the most memorable travel experiences that I've had in my life. I've spent years of my life traveling around Europe, Asia, South America, Central America. And this is definitely up there. The people you meet, the spiritual experiences you have, the internal conversations that you get to have after walking thousands upon thousands upon thousands of kilometers. Like, it's just truly amazing. I shouldn't say thousands upon thousands upon thousands of kilometers. That's a bit of a stretch. Dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds of, let's say, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I'm exaggerating. I'll pull that back a bit. But yeah, I truly believe that this is worth it if you are considering doing the Camino, saving up a little bit of money, getting over there. It's incredible. It's an incredible experience. You don't have to do the entirety either. You don't have to do 41 days. You can go over and do a week. You can go over and do 4 days from Sevilla over to Santiago. I will say after Santiago, those final 3 days over to the coast were some of my favorite days on the entire Camino. Gorgeous scenery, far less people, 100% worth it. If you're thinking about going that extra few days, do it. Please do it. But yeah, it's just an incredible experience. If you want to know more about my experience specifically, I do have a documentary that I posted. It's about, I think it's about 2.5 hours long. It is a little bit vulnerable for me. There are pieces that I cut out because it does get incredibly emotional doing something like this. If you're, I guess it depends on the person, but for me, it got very emotional, and a lot of things bubbled up to the surface, and I let out on screen, and I deleted some of that because it was too much. But I believe it is a good window into what the Camino really can be and what the Camino really is for just the average person who wants to go and experience it. So I highly recommend checking that out. If there's any other questions that you have or something isn't clear, please just drop it down below, let me know, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Yeah, that's about it. I think that's about it. Thanks very much. Buen camino. That's a terrible way to end it. I don't know how to end these things. I never know how to end these things. It's just like whatever, you know?